My name is Richard Breward. I'm the Honorary Curator of Archaeology at the Museum, which I've done for about 8 years. We're in front of the Maiden Castle for display in the museum. In the corner there are some metal artefacts, swords and axes and things. These were made locally by local ironsmiths and used for agricultural purposes, killing purposes, i.e. animals, and for defence.
So, what bronze casting took place at Maiden Castle then?
Things like this hub cap, if you like, from a chariot would have been made at Maiden Castle. On the cart, pulled by the ox or by a horse, the chariot, you'd have had a boss on the end of the wheel, and that would have been a wheel boss. That object there, round object, looks a bit like a glass with a stem on it. And these bronze objects, these are jewellery, and they would have been made for the men and the women at Maiden Castle.
Was there a difference between the iron objects and the bronze objects?
Well, yes, the bronze objects would have been a lot finer. You had a lot more skill involved in doing the bronze objects, and also you could carve them a little bit. So you find bronze objects with carving in them, and you also have the opportunity to put jewels in them. And bronze doesn't rust like iron. Iron goes, as you know, goes red and deteriorates away. Bronze just goes black. If you clean it, it comes bright again.
In front of me here we have some sling stones over here. Richard, what are sling stones?
Well, quite simply, they're stones shot from a sling, like David used against Goliath.
Would they have been used to defend the castle?
Yes, most definitely. They'd have been used, they'd have had leather slings, they'd have put the stone into the sling, wrapped it round their heads and let go, and it would have gone off and hit someone. And I suspect after a few hundred years of doing this, they got quite accurate and quite deadly. There were 22,000 of these stones found at Maiden Castle. That's why we think they were used to defend it. You only fired one stone at a time, so it's very much like a bullet with a muzzle loader.
A bit like a pea shooter, isn't it? What other defences would they have used?
Well, they had the walls, the valances, the 6 layers that people had to get over. They had the doorways, which were quite impenetrable, and they had spears and swords and things. I think they were quite well defended.
Weird shaped thing down there.
That's the weird shaped thing. Are you talking about the iron pin?
The one near the 26.
That's an iron pin.
Yeah.
That was used to fix clothing together. So you put your cloak around you and you put the pin through it, and that was that. That's iron, that's not bronze.
Then we got these two bits over here. One of them reminds me of I wouldn't say the door handle, I understand that one of these spindles here was apparently made of the human bone. Why would they have used the human thigh bone to make the bone spindle whirl? Was this common, and why?
Well, it's not terribly common, but there's no reason why they shouldn't. It's only a dead human after all. And in those days they might not have had the same loyalty to the dead as they did later on. If you wanted to make a spindle whirl, you can go and make one of shale, like some of these are, which involves going to Kimmeridge and getting someone to turn it on a lathe, or you can get one of chalk, or you can use bone. And what better bit of the human bone than the top of the thigh, for instance?
I'm standing in front of section 23 with these little things which seem to have something to do with what the people in the Iron Age would have done to entertain themselves. What sort of gaming or gambling would they have done in the Iron Age?
Well, basically they'd have used items like these artefacts and just thrown them on the ground and see which way they landed and count the dots on them, or see something else about them, and that would have been it, really.
Who would have done it?
Some of the people who didn't have to work for a living. The elite.
What other types of activities would they have done for entertainment in the Iron Age, i.e. storytelling, music, etc.?
Well, we've got no evidence of any music at Maiden Castle. There's certainly no DVDs or computer games.
No.
It's surprising how little time they'd have had to do anything else. This is the thing, they were surviving from day to day. Every day was a work day. Every day you got up at dawn, you had your breakfast, you went to work, you came home, you had your dinner, you went to bed. So there was very little time in there to do anything, apart from if you were very rich or very powerful, where you didn't have to do all the menial things.